Brett, did you know how to finish it from here? No? Oh man, we're stuck. Jay Lee will help you.
Is this what you did yesterday?
No.
So like, I did not have to do this on the homework.
No.
I did. All right.
Look, what I'm trying to teach you is how to read directions. I know that's a hard concept. Okay, but because there's different ways to go about it. Does anybody know what we did yesterday was called?
Like factoring by square?
No,
Oh, math.
it was math.
Quadratic.
Completing the square. Yesterday was completing.
You guys, I read it. But you didn't solve the problems. I did.
Okay. And so like I said, there's different methods to go through there. It just kind of depends upon the directions. So it kind of help you out on the test. Now here, you factor out the GCF would be a 2x here. And then when you factor that out, you get parentheses x minus 4. GCF for the second one is a 3. And you get the same group. You should get the same group, x minus 4. So now I got x minus 4. Hold on here. X minus 4, and then 2x plus 3 equals 0. And now we set each one equal to 0. Now you set each one equal to 0. And then we solve those. And then so when I add 4, you get x equals 4. I'm going to take an extra step here. I'm going to subtract 3. And then when I divide by 2, I get negative 3 halves. So I get negative 3 halves 4 for those two answers. Okay. Now, if you did it completing the square, I mean, you should get the same answers, but you got to follow the directions based upon what we were given. Now, going through, most of you were pretty good on yesterday's work. A couple minor mistakes, but let me give you the answers here for yesterday. Those are the answers for what we had: 2, 4, negative 3 halves 4. I know you didn't have to do 7, so don't worry about that. 8, you should have 2 cases, and some of you noticed it ended up being similar to the one we did in class, which was fine. So -1 plus or minus square root of 2 would be the radical. The decimal would be -5.69 and 3.69. So they're being the same.
No, will you cut off points if you don't make it like the smallest number?
What do you mean?
Like in x equals -5.69, would you cut it off if I did 3.69?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, that's fine. That's fine. All right, number 9 ends up being 1 and 9. Let me see what number 9 looks like. Okay. All right. 10, 23. 10, you should get -8 plus or minus square root of 156. And then that becomes the decimal, -20.49. Okay. And then 4.49. $23 is -13, -2, 30 is -1, -3, and then 32. -5 plus or minus square root of 30, and then -10.48 and 0.48 for that. I want to take a look at 23 because there's one little thing in there you got to watch. Well, not just one. Now, what's the original problem for 23?
X squared plus 15x equals -26.
All right, so in this case here, it does say completing the square. So I get x squared plus 15x plus We put in that blank. Now, here's the issue, because what happens when we divide that by 2? What kind of number do we get? We get a decimal. We don't get a nice number. So sometimes that happens. So you take 15 divided by 2 squared. 15 divided by 2 squared. All right, what does that give us? What is, Rachel, you got what that is?
I have 56.25.
56.25. So this now becomes x squared plus 15x plus 56.25 equals all right, this is the hard part. Well, the easy part's over here on this side, because what is that, 30.25? A lot of you are like, all right, what does that factor into? And I tried to give you a clue yesterday, or we went through a clue, but it's not obvious. This is going to become, since this is a plus, it's going to become x plus something squared. And I went over that. Does anybody know what that something is? How did you get that? You're right. What's that?
Square root of 56.25.
Okay. So and that would be correct. That's one way you can go about it. Jordan?
It's 1/15.
It's half of 15. So what I said, the other kind of way is whatever this number is, before you square it, it's always going to be the same as that. So it's going to be 7.5. Okay, so that's always going to work for that. Now you take your square root, x plus 7.5 squared equals plus or minus square root of 30.25. Now, what is the square root of 30.25? It comes out to a decent number. Well, I'm not sure. 6.25? I was totally wrong. 5.5. Plus or minus. And so this actually works out okay when I subtract negative 7.5. You end up with, what is it? What are the final answers out of? Negative 2 and what? Negative 13. Okay. All right, we got one more section to cover. We're going to do that today and tomorrow, review on Friday, and with late starts coming up Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to have the quiz on Monday. We'll take about 5 or so minutes to kind of do a quick review, but you're going to have to make sure you kind of pay attention on Friday as we go through some things. So let me give you some guided notes here. Where are they? Exactly.
Yeah, they'll be super about that.
It is, I mean, it is quadratic formula.
Try to bottle that site.
How are these green pictures?
They're all right.
That's the worst price.
Spread out.
It's like 400, but times
It's not Tuesdays and Wednesdays, right?
Yeah.
Wait, why? But when you don't have it. So like, so like. Yeah, so.
First one is 2.
Well, they sound something out about
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah. Every Sunday. You have to check file 4 for whatever.
I got a 2-minute 30 second
Would you like some?
I get up.
It looks like he's just not.
Don't say that.
All right, the quadratic formula. I know you've been waiting for this. It is here. Now, to solve a quadratic, to solve anything that looks like this, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. There's different ways, and some of them are, depending on which way you use it, are easier for some equations than others. We have done factoring. That is what we just looked at. Yesterday, we did completing the square. And now today, we're going to use what's called the quadratic formula. On there. Factoring does not work for every equation. Okay, factoring does not work for every equation. So it doesn't, so you can't use it all the time. Completing the square and quadratic formula will work for every problem we come up with. Completing the square is what we did yesterday. To me, that tends to be harder, especially depending upon the problem. Quadratic formula is not that bad once we learn the formula. So this is our formula. It says x equals, I like to say the opposite of b is negative b, the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. The a, the b, and the c are the numbers in front of the x squared, the x, and the constant, just like we always have. Okay, that doesn't change. So as you take a look at this one here, and now this is different than completing a square. Completing a square, you'd move the 20 over. We don't want to do that for this one. We want to set it equal to 0. We want to think, all right, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And now let's identify what is the a value, what is the b value, and what is the c value. Make sure you understand those off the bat. Connor, what do you think? What do you think the a value is?
Bx squared.
What is it?
Bx.
It's got to be a number. Allie, help him out.
1.
It's the number 1 because you say there's nothing in front of there. You've got it. There's a 1 in front of there. So a is 1. So write that down. A is 1. Allie, what's the b value?
Negative 1.
-1. And what's my c value? Allie?
-1.
Okay, you do have to include the sign. So that should be the first thing you got written down there. A is 1. B is -1. C is -20. Now to get the answer, now we take the formula. Now you're going to need to write the formula down to learn that. You need to know this for the quiz. Okay, you need to know this. So here's how you learn it. You write it down. Okay, every time you write it down, it comes in your memory. So the x equals -b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And now you plug in everything where it goes. Now it might be easier here. It says the opposite of b. If b is -1, it's going to become what? Instead of -1, it becomes +1. Go ahead and make it a 1. Plus or minus b squared. Now here's where the biggest mistake occurs. You've got to put that in parentheses. -4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is -20. Over 2 times 1. All right, here's the biggest issue. What are we going to get underneath the radical? I need to see that. Use your calculator. You can type that whole thing in, but you got to type it in as it is. See what you get. That number is what goes underneath the radical. Just automatically get your calculator every day. Because this is math class. And then you use it. Yeah, I'll put easy again. I know. All right, did you type it in?
No.
Why not?
Because I just got that in.
All right. Type her in. Don't do the radical yet. Don't do the radical yet. I just. Don't do the radical. Don't do the radical. Just do what's inside the yellow. You're supposed to do over, so just do -1 squared.
I got, wait.
Okay. So we're not gonna worry about that radical yet. Jordan,
Oh, I was thinking the answer.
what'd you get?
81.
You got 81? Okay. He's got 81. That's correct. Because here's what I want to make sure you do. You got to put -1 in parentheses. -4 times 1 times -20. Okay? 81. 81. You got to make sure you can get that and get it correct. So now here's what we got. We got x equals, whoops, hold on. Did you get 81, Grant?
No, I just got 9.
You got 9? All right, well, because you did the
I got
square root.
92.
All right,
What was I supposed to do?
hold on.
Just the number.
Those of you who got 9, it'll end up being 9, but we need to see this first. This is important. Okay, so don't use the square root when don't start with the square root. Start with what's inside of it first. Okay, so now that's the square root of 81. What is the square root of 81? That is 9. You can use your calculator for that if you need to, but the square root is 9. So now this equals 1 plus or minus 9 all over 2. When you got that plus or minus, it means we're going to get 2 different answers. We can now finish this problem. What you got to do, though, is hold on here. And you can go from here to your final answer, but here's what's going on. I'm going to show you. Technically, we're doing 1 plus 9 divided by 2, and then we're doing 1 minus 9 divided by 2. And here you got to watch because I'm going to do this wrong and see if you can tell me what I did wrong. If I do 1 plus 9 divided by 2, okay, that answer is wrong. Okay, because what's 1 plus 9?
10.
And what's 10 divided by 2?
5.
Okay, so if you type it in like that, it's going to give you're wrong. So you got to be smarter than that. So you can either put that 1 plus 9 in parentheses, or I think you're smart enough to add them together.
Okay, let me add this. I think you guys are smart enough to just do this in your head.
Yes.
1 plus 9 is 10, 10 divided by 2 is 5. But you're dumb enough to do what Mr. D-Lap did and calculate it.
So without using your calculator, what would be the answer to the second piece? Jordan?
-4.
-4, because 1 minus 9 is -8. -8 divided by 2 is -4. We do get 2 answers. Okay, so you do get 2 answers, so it's -4, 5 for that. And like you said, you're smart enough to do it that way, but you're also dumb enough to just type it in your calculator and assume that's the answer. So just be careful on that. That's probably the main thing you got to watch on there. So that one worked out. So that says if I plug in those numbers, it's going to equal 0. And I'm just going to show you real quick because one of the answers was 5, right? Positive 5. 5 squared. Joe, what's 5 squared? 25. What's 25 minus 5? And what's 20 minus 20? So that works. -4 squared is positive 16. 16 minus -4 is 20, and then 20 minus 20 is 0. So those 2 answers both work. You can always check them for that. So those work out nice. All right. Now, the reason quadratic formula is a little bit nicer is that what did we have to do yesterday if we had a number in front of x squared? We had to divide by 6, which would be really nasty on this rest of the problem. It would make it very difficult. Jordan, what was your question? Good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Quadratic formula is easier. Now, what is my A, B, and C? J. Lee. Let's see if we can identify those.
6 is the A, 5 is the B, and 4 is the C.
Negative, okay, good. So now write the quadratic formula down, right? X equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Negative, so you write that. Now you just fill in where everything goes. Okay, fill in where everything goes. It's the opposite of b. B is positive 5, so I'm gonna make it negative 5. Plus or minus the square root. B squared is 5 squared minus 4. A is 6. C is negative 4 over 2 times 6. Okay, now figure out what's that. Do not take the square root yet. Do not take the square root yet. And so just do, type in everything in there and see what number you get. Let me see. I forget that. It was on the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
That's 12. Okay. All right. Tommy, did you get that number yet?
I got 121.
All right, 121. Now, don't forget, the 12 goes on the bottom. So if he did 5 squared minus 4 times 6 times negative 4. 121. Now, check, is that going to be a nice square root? What's the square root of 121? Turns out to be a nice number. So at this point, that will now become x equals negative 5 plus or minus 11 over 12. Once we take the square root, be careful. Some people like to write the radical over the 11. When you take the square root of 21, your calculator gives you 11. You no longer use that square root symbol. You're done because you took the square root. Now we come up with our two answers. So what is, I'm going to do them over here. So negative 5 plus 11 over 12. And then the other one is negative 5 minus 11 over 12. Now you're going to get decimals. If you get a decimal, I want you to keep it as a fraction. So this is where you can just do it in your head. What's negative 5 plus 11? 6. Now if you need your calculator for that, that's fine, but just stop there. So it's 6 over 12, which reduces to 1 over 2. Negative 5 minus 11. Negative 16. Oh, Jay Lee, you're on fire. All right, now, oh, man, Mr. Schiller, this is like big time simplifying. This is like AP Calc.
It's not even there.
Negative 4 over 3.
Negative 4 over 3. All right, good. So those are our two answers. So I get x equals negative 4/3 and positive 1/2. Negative 4/3 and positive 1/2. Now this is a little bit harder to check because you got to plug in 1/2, and so that would be a little bit more tedious. So we're not going to do that one. But that's the idea. And this is just using that formula. All right, let's skip C. Let's go to D. Go to D. Now, before you go too far, take a look. How is it a little bit different than the one we've done?
It doesn't equal 0.
Doesn't equal 0. You're going to have to make it equal 0. Okay, you're going to have to make it equal 0. Okay. So add 1, 2x squared minus 8x plus 1 equals 0. So let's do that. All right, now identify your A, B, and C. Josh, what are my A, B, and C?
The A is 2,
Okay,
the B is -8, and the C is -1. No, 0. It would be, no, it's 0. +1.
hey, there we go. Here's the key,
Act
is,
like y'all know that. What? It was hard.
to get your signs right, it has to equal 0. So like you cannot say C is -1. If you plug in -1 into the problem, you'll end up getting it wrong, the answer wrong. So you gotta set it equal to 0. Once it's equal to 0, then you can say, all right, A is this, B is this, and C is this. Otherwise, like you said, you're gonna end up with a mistake. Now, the equation, the formula, x equals -b, the opposite of b, square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Substitute in. All right, b is -8. What is the opposite of -8? +8. So make that +8. You are going to square that. Make sure you put that in parentheses. A we said was 2, C we said was 1 over 2 times 2. All right, see what you get underneath the radical.
What is it supposed to be like that? The Ohio is square.
All right, type that in. Grant, what'd you end up with?
56.
Okay, you should get 56. Did anybody get a negative number? You got a negative number?
Yeah.
-72. -72?
Yeah, that's what you get when you don't put it in the parentheses.
Okay. -72. All right, so here's the key. This -8 squared, you got to put that in parentheses because that's going to be +64 minus 4 times 2 times 1. Okay, you get 56.
You need to put the -1 in parentheses.
I don't know about the 512.
Yeah, I don't know how to do it.
So, okay, now, what is the square root? Square root of 56 is not a nice number, is it? Okay, so here's one thing. I want to do 2 things here. This right here. That's your radical answer. Like the other day, remember we had a radical answer and a decimal answer because it doesn't come out to a whole number for both of them or nice numbers. We got a radical answer. So that would be one of your answers. Now the decimal answer, we need to figure out what the square root of 56 is.
Well, hey, Mr. For that, do we want them to simplify the 8/4?
No,
Or just leave it like that?
nope, let's get too much. Because we don't like try to reduce the radical
Yeah.
or anything like that.
Okay.
That's algebra 2. And so right here, this becomes 8 plus or minus, what is the square root of 56? It's 7.48 over 4. Now let's list our 2 decimal answers. So do this, do 8 plus 7.48, hit equals, divided by 4, 3.87. And then do 8 minus 7.48 divided by 4. And you get 0.13. And that's your decimal answer. Okay, that's your decimals.
I got 0.04.
Yeah, what?
0.04.
For the second one?
Yeah.
Okay, did you, 8?
Oh, never mind. I did 7 minus 8.4.
Okay, all right, so there we go. All right, now here's what I need you to do. We're gonna actually make this, I'm gonna give you 5 problems. I'm gonna reduce this to 4 through 12 even. Okay, this is a double assignment, it's 20 points. Part of each problem is you gotta write down the quadratic formula for each one, that counts. If you don't, you lose a point.
So we're doing what we did today.
What's that?
We're doing what we did today.
What you did today,
Well, this is kind of harder than what we did yesterday.
you think?
A little bit.
All right, well, we'll see.
I think it's kind of easy.
That's why you use your notes to help you.
I did use my notes, it's simple.
Right, so here's the deal.
You didn't.
Yes,
Never
We have to
mind.
write
Probably best you don't.
the -b plus or minus.
Yep.
That, or what's that here?
yep.
That's not bad.
I mean, that's part of the work.
So that's just, all we have to do is just write down that and then.
4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 5 problems. 5 problems, 20 points, there's 4 points a problem. I might actually.
Yeah.
Where you get
Or
your
else.
Really?
Dude, I worked that happened.
I didn't know it was that one.
Yes,
You made that one up.
Yeah.
No, no.
Two cents, I got it right.
You did it right.
I got it right. I got it right. I did. I got it right in my head.
In your world, it's right. It's not the right world we're in.
Reality.
This is a mistake.
Whatever, skipped out my pencil.